Today on The Chef's Cut, Joe and I are talking about the controversial New York Times list of the 100 best restaurants in New York City that just came out. We're starting with what people are saying about our previous guest, chief food critic Lagaya Michon, and her picks.
It makes more sense if you almost read it in no particular order.
And what has people all in their feelings about this list?
They ask the question, well, what is a restaurant?
Right. We also have an exciting announcement about the newest companion to the Chef's Cut podcast family. Our little company is growing, and we want to hear from you, Chef's Cut Nation. Head to the comments and share your list of the top restaurants in your city. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe and rate and review wherever you get your pods, because it really does help.
We are back with more breaking news from the news desk, from New York, from your home.
Yes,
this week.
Yes.
So friend of the pod, Lagaya.
Yes.
In the news again.
Chief food critic for the New York Times.
Chief food critic for the New York Times comes out with her list of 100 best restaurants in New York City.
Yeah, bold list.
Bold list. And I think, first and foremost, whenever you're making a list, right, it's always going to ruffle feathers. And I feel like there's always been this food writer versus, like, you know, they call them like listicles. You know what I mean? The articles that are lists, you know,
right.
Of like how so many publications have just become listicles. You know what I mean? The Eater 38, the Infatuation 24, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Yes, top 10 donuts that are not pink in, you know, Portland. So I think, you know, for this coming out, 100 best restaurants in New York is like, one, it's an insurmountable task, right?
Right.
I mean, there's an unbelievable amount of restaurants in New York. But so it's a really broad ranging list, right?
Huge range. So that's something that has gotten a lot. And these lists, like Lagaya Michon, she's a very thoughtful food writer. And we see that in her writing, but we also saw that when she came on the podcast and talked about her reasoning when she had that infamous Alinea review that came out. And she talked about her reasoning. She talked about, and she didn't shy away from any of our questions. I mean, huge respect for that. We had a great conversation with her. And the way she thinks about things, I think is really cool. So on one hand, I love this list. On the other hand, if part of the criteria, which isn't necessarily as spelled out, but the criteria is like the New Yorkiness of a restaurant, then there are so many places that are quintessentially New York that aren't necessarily on here. And that's something that a lot of people have said, like Tom Colicchio, Eli Sussman, everybody's got their IG accounts talking about the list.
We're going to make a list of 100 best restaurants in New York City. No criteria. It's going to be based just on vibe. But they'll all be like essentially New York. But we won't include some places that are quintessentially New York. It won't be clickbaity at all. You'd think there'd be some standardized metric at which all the restaurants could be weighed against each other, but there won't be.
One thing that Lagaya says is these are meant to spark debate. These are meant to get you to think about them and maybe try something, because I don't care if you don't live in New York, but if you look at this list and you see there's a place that does traditional Khachapuri, you may not live in New York, but check your town, check your city that you live in and say, I wonder what cuisines people are cooking here that I haven't tried yet. So that's the thing. Like, yes, this is a list of restaurants in New York, but you can extrapolate this to any city. You can say, okay, well, you know what? I haven't been to Ukrainian Village in Chicago in a while, or I live in Iowa and I haven't been to Chinatown in Des Moines before. So maybe let me go check that out. And Joe, like you mentioned, Lagaya Michon is a friend of the pod. We had her on back in October? October, November, somewhere around there. And she talked about doing the research and starting to go out to restaurants to look at for this list. And remember how she talked about price points and accessibility.
She did. And I think that was an interesting thing. And I think you see it in the list where she brought up that, you know, not just looking at a place from like good to good, but like, what does it, you know, cost to go there? What does it feel like? And so I think, you know, you see that through line in her list.
How much does the price point affect how you see the restaurant?
Right now we're at a moment, something like 13.5% of American households face food insecurity. So this is just something I think about. We cannot all afford to eat like this. I'm cosplaying as somebody who can afford to eat at these restaurants because the New York Times is paying for it. I try to think, is this a place I would come back and spend my own money?
There's so many things on here that are very small mom and pop kind of places. And this is one of the first times that I've seen this many. Like Pete Wells' top 100 list, he had that same mix. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like there's a lot more deliberate work that Lagaya did taking the train to the end of the line. And she said walking 20 or 40 blocks sometimes to find these restaurants. So these aren't places that are necessarily all in Manhattan. I mean, the Bronx got a couple places on here. Like these are places in Flushing, in Brighton Beach. Like these are places that I've never even been. I've been to Flushing, but I've never been to Brighton Beach. Like there are places in New York that I have never been to those neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting things about it, right? There's a ton of hits on this list. If you're featured on a list of the best 100 restaurants in New York, no matter where you fall on it, it's a really good placement.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Just by sheer volume, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the most interesting questions I heard brought up after I saw the article for the first time, and I forgot who brought it up, but they asked the question, well, what is a restaurant?
Right.
And I think that is really interesting to me because the other thing on here, there's street vendors, there's food trucks, there's stuff like that. So it's like, and like, obviously this is the guy's list. So it's, whatever the hell she wants it to be, right? There's this isn't Michelin, this isn't beer, this isn't, 50 best. There's no committee, there's no rules. This is the 100 shit I like best, right? You know what I mean? This is just whatever the fuck I like.
Right.
And I think that's really cool from a perspective, but it almost reads more to me like somebody, if they said, hey, I'm coming to New York, where should I go? Like, give me a list of New York places to hit.
Right.
Like, not like this is the 100 best restaurants in New York, but this is 100 places you should go in New York.
Okay.
And I almost think it makes more sense if you almost read it in no particular order.
Once you get past the top 10, I agree with that. But I think in the top 10, in that order, I think those are some really profoundly cool dining experiences that I think people should try for sure. Okay, so let's break this down like we did when the beard list came out, right? So remember, throwback to the beard short list came out and we got everything off our chest and we talked about it. So let's talk about this in the same way. Kabawa, number one, I'm here for it. I love it. Yeah. I think it is such a special restaurant and I think it's changing so much about dining and the way people look at food and different cultures and accepting them. Joe, you came to New York not that long ago and you said, where should I go to eat? I have one dinner out. You were doing the Today Show and you were here with Hillary and two of your business partners. And you said, where should I go out for dinner tonight? Should I stay somewhere close to my hotel? This is where we're staying. Or should I just take the cab ride over to Kabawa? And I said, 100% go to Kabawa. And I think I made your reservation for you so that you guys could.
Much. I do appreciate it.
It's because we've talked so much about it. I'm like, you have one meal in New York. You have to go to Kabawa. You absolutely have to. And I think it was a good call. I've been there like 2-3 times, but what did you think?
Tremendously good. You sit up at the counter there. It's really fun. The food's really delicious. It's thoughtful ingredients, the stuff that made a lot of sense. It was really good. And the spices and just like, I mean, the whole experience of it is really cool, right? You're right on the kitchen. The prefix kind of style to it, I think is really neat and interesting of like, it's not full tasting menu, but it's still kind of a guided journey. Yeah. Which I think is nice when you're going into a cuisine you don't know a ton about. Like I want someone to tell me like, hey, like eat these things. It'll be really good. So the Hobies at Kabawa come out number one.
Teresi number 3, Yamada Sushi Place number 2. I haven't been there, but I do want to go. I mean, there are some Meju Hooni Kim, the chef of Meju, had a restaurant called Donji back in the day, which after Youngsik opened, Youngsik is also on this list. Youngsik is the only 3 Michelin-starred Korean restaurant in the city. Hooni Kim, who's the chef of Meju, opened Donji not long after Youngsik opened and changed the game in New York for Korean dining. I remember one time we got these clay pots that were placed over this little flame. And I was like, oh, okay, great. What are they putting in here for us to eat? They're like, oh, it's the season for cod sperm. And I'm like, cool. I guess I'm eating cod sperm tonight. But like,
I forgot it was cod sperm season. I don't know.
Right. Who knew?
I didn't put it on my calendar this year.
Next time my alert will go off so I know to go to Donji. But he's been such a big player in the food scene in New York for a long time. So I'm so glad to see him getting his flowers of Meju. Jean George at number 5. I mean, that is, I've always had good meals there. I haven't been in a long time, but Jean George at number 5, a lot of people were surprised by that.
I've never been there. You know what I
Really?
mean? I cannot speak on
And
Jean
that's
George.
like an OG New York place. So when I was a line cook at Le Bernardin, Jean George had you could get a prefix lunch and it was like 30 something bucks.
Mm-hmm.
It was the best value in the city. It eventually had gone up to like 50 something. And even at 50 something, it was still a value. So like all the line cooks from every restaurant in New York, it's like, who's doing lunch at Jean George? Because that was one of the only places we could afford.
Right. That was lunch at Blackbird in Chicago. You know what I mean?
Like
but,
Atomix
okay.
is on here, Aquavit, Sema.
But, all right, John George at 5, I think makes my point more valid of like, you like this list better if you take it out of order.
Okay.
If you take it as this is 100 places you should go. Because I think your argument for it is a really good argument of like, this is, you know what I mean? It's quintessential. That like, I've never had a bad meal there. It's really, really good. It's all of this. Is it the 5th best restaurant in New York City
I see
right
what you mean.
now as we live and breathe?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know what I mean? For me, I've never eaten there, so I can't say definitively, but if I thought of my top 5, that wouldn't even be on my radar. And maybe that's the point, is that it should be, right? But I think like if I look at this list as like, this is 100 places I should eat at in New York, then you're saying to me, John George is one of the top ones if we're doing a meal like that. If we're going out, and I think they're only 2 Michelin stars now, but I'll still keep them in the 3 realm from, you know, experience and price wise, right?
Yeah.
If we're looking at having a dinner that's a Le Bernardin, that's a Jean George, that's a 11 Madison Park, which is not on this list.
Right. Shocker. Whoa.
John George should be higher on your consideration than you think. If you're thinking of a Danielle, it ranks 50 places higher than Danielle on this list.
And it's crazy because I mean, there are a few fine dining on here, but the classic old school New York ones, Jean George, Danielle, and Le Bernardin. Saga is also on there, which I think is a phenomenal restaurant also. But you don't see a ton of fine dining. You see a lot. Atomix is also on here.
Aquavit's on there.
Yeah, Atomix,
Sema's
Aquavit.
on there. That's fine dining.
That is, you're right.
Sushi Show.
But you're not seeing like per se 11 Madison.
Yeah,
I was surprised
I
about
did not realize that. No per se on this list.
No per se, no EMP.
That is one I did love. Via Carota at 13.
Yes.
I think Via Carota, the importance of that restaurant for people who cook Italian food in the United States is so undervalued. You know what I mean? Because I think like stylistically what they do for me is wildly influential. You know what I mean? It's a restaurant I reference all the time. Their cookbook is a cookbook I reference all the time. First time I ever met Missy Robbins, I had lunch at Via Carota with her and Tony Montuano.
And Missy's on here with Lilia. Oh, that's
Missy's
so
on there
awesome.
with Lilia. But I think like, you know, Lilia, I think would be a restaurant you would consider heavy influenced by Via Carota.
Yeah, I could see
So
that.
I think like that's fair. I think the placement there makes a ton of sense. So I'm super happy to see Via Carota get their flowers on that.
Me
because
too.
I feel like
think
it's one of those places to me that like can't be, you know, like pumped up enough of like how good it really is and like how important it really is. I think.
When people ask me where should I go in New York, I am always telling them Via Carota is in my 5 that I tell people to go to. because it isn't pretentious. You know, you're going to have a phenomenal meal no matter when. And I love the food. I've always loved the food, and it's been consistently awesome. There are so many restaurants on here that I love, like Tatiana, that I've had phenomenal meals at over the years too. And I mean, Tatiana was number one on the Times list 2 years in a row, I think. And they came in this year at 12, but they were number one 2 years in a row. And they have been consistently amazing for the years that they've been open. Another restaurant I was super pumped to see on here. Now, this was far off. So for you knowing White Bear, for me, this would be Double A Bakery in Brooklyn. Now, this is Trinidadian doubles. I loved this place when I lived in Bed-Stuy around the time like I had first moved to New York. I was still bartending. I was working in culinary school during the day, bartending at night. Double A Bakery was off of the A train near my stop in Bed-Stuy. And I would get there. And back then it was like $1.50 or $2, and you would get two doubles. So you have the roti and it's stuffed with the chana, the chickpeas, the potatoes. They put the tamarind sauce or the chutney, whatever sauces you want in there, and they twist it up in the paper and they send you on your way. And they are so freaking delicious. I was so pumped to see them on here. I love them.
I mean, Four Horsemen is at 20.
Oh, yeah.
And I think like Four Horsemen, that's a restaurant that I ate at 10 years ago. That's a restaurant that I ate at, I think, 6 months ago when I was in New York over the summer. And
they're up for outstanding this year. They made it to the short list.
And I mean, and I know they get theirs, right? You know what I mean? They're, wildly cool. And obviously, I think James Murphy of LCD Sound Systems, being a part of it, it's, somebody from one of my favorite bands of all time too, is also part of one of my favorite restaurants. I think like that one made a lot of sense to me, is really cool. Le Bernardin's at 21. And it's just like, but how do you compare Le Bernardin to Four Horsemen?
Right.
Like it's comparing Mozart to what I mean, like
A$AP Rocky,
LCD Sound System,
or LCD,
you know what I mean? Like it'd be like, which is a better band?
Yes,
it's like, well, are they both even bands? Like like, and I think that's the hard part of the list. Like that's why I like looking at it with the idea of like, there's not a place on here that I don't want to try. That I'm like, I wouldn't eat there, or that if there's any place on here that I have eaten where I'm like, I wouldn't go back. There's none on there where I saw one where I was like, I ate there, I wouldn't go back there, and I wouldn't recommend it to people. You know what I mean? It's like, it's 100%. Bangers on bangers on bangers.
Chouquette, Aisha was on the pod. Chouquette is on here. She's also up for Best Chef New York this year. Lola's, Suzanne Cups. She was the chef working for Michael Anthony when they had Untitled at the Whitney. She's she's a stalwart of a New York chef. She's on here. Thai Diner. Amazing. Estella,
I think for me is
Ramirez.
One of those ones where it's like, because I think like also like you and I have like obviously wild different perspectives on New York, right? Because you live there, you're in it, you've worked in New York, you've been in that scene for 20 years now. But like for me, it's always a tourist city for me, right? I'm always coming as a visitor. Anyone who I talk to about it who's going to eat in New York is not a New Yorker. You know what I mean? Nobody who lives in New York is asking me where to eat in New York, obviously, right? So it's always people visiting from other cities saying, hey, I'm going to New York. So it's always like, hey, where are you staying? And if it's your first time in New York. Yeah. And there's so many places on this list where I'm like, if this is your first time in New York, the one I that's not on the list that's shocking to me is one that I send people to all the time is Gramercy Tavern.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
like,
speaking of Michael Anthony, I'm surprised too. That is a quintessentially New York place.
I think just everything about like the food I think is awesome. I've never had a bad meal there. I think the service there is top tier.
Phenomenal.
And for me as an outsider, as someone who doesn't live in New York and just gets to go and cosplay New York for a couple days at a time, I think like if you are coming from another city and you want to have a lunch and pretend like you are really in New York for an hour and a half or 2 hours, like, I don't know if I've had a better version of that than Gramercy Tavern.
Yeah. That's true.
Like, so that's surprising to me. And maybe that's just an outsider perspective. As a Chicagoan, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. It's so New York. And people, New York are like, no, it's not that New York. But I love it. So I was very, very surprised by that.
That's a good point. Another restaurant I was surprised that didn't make it on this list that I had an amazing meal at. And I think I told you about it after Steven and I went there, a restaurant called Bong.
Yeah, you've been talking about this place. I'm not familiar with it, but you were gassing it up pretty hard.
I thought the food there was so good, and I did not see Bong on the list. So I was surprised by that, especially because Lagaya did have such a strong focus on like a lot of mom and pop kind of restaurants that are off the beaten path, kind of doing different cuisines. And Bong is doing Cambodian cuisine, which isn't a huge thing, even in New York, even though we have a pretty sizable community. But it's a little hipster, it's a little cool, it's a little fun and funky, but it is still very mom and pop in that the chef, she and her husband own and run the place. She's the chef. He runs front of house and hospitality and the wine program, along with some of their team. But I thought the food was so good. And I do see some of the Southeast Asian representation on the list, but I was really surprised that Bong was not on the list this year.
The other one for me is Res Dora at 63. I think the food he cooks there is probably the closest food I've seen to like what like Michelin food in Italy looks like. Of places I've been, of places I've staged at, where it's like true Italian fine dining. And that's
Stefano Secchi, the chef there, right? Yeah,
Stefano Secchi. Yeah. And I think like what he does there is like, it is like pure, it is beautiful, it is fine dining. Like, like he belongs on the list without a doubt. But for me, that one could be ran up way
further
higher.
Up from the 60s. Yeah, I've heard amazing things. I have to admit, I've never actually been there yet. I've met Stefano and his wife, but I have never been there.
Yeah, I think because it's Italian, it gets a little undervalued there of like, you know what I mean? It's not treated as like the same as like the fine dining French, because it's like they're still serving pasta and it's like a heavy pasta menu. But it's like the skill and the technique he has in that food is so high level. It's so high level. Like, it's food that looks super simple and approachable, but is so techniquey. It is so high level of difficulty to execute at the level he executes it. To me, it's like super happy to see it about the list again. But for me, that's one where it's like, I don't know. I could put that in a top 25 easily.
Okay, so let's talk about one place that you and I have both been to separately, and we've talked about before that's on the list. I can't remember the number, but it is Una Pizza Napolitana.
Una Pizza Napolitana. I believe
that's on here.
It was right next to White Bear, so I want to say it's 82.
Okay. So I like the place. So I went, and it was later in the evening. Definitely had like a late reservation. And at that time of night, because one person makes all the pizza. One person. So you definitely wait longer the later you go, because orders are a little bit backed up. But it is a beautiful space. The pizza was really good. It's got those blistered, charred edges. And I'm not as familiar. I have not traveled to the birthplaces of pizza, but the dough has a little bit more chew to it. It's not stretchy, but it has a little bit more of that chew to it. So you were telling me that's more classic, right?
Well, I mean, for me, I think it's just a texture that Italians really, really love. And you see play out through Italian cuisine as like chewy as a texture in a super positive way. Yeah. As opposed to, I think, like in American food and like, French fine dining, like classic food where you and I, came up cooking, it was like everything was like tender, right? Yeah. Everything's soft. Everything's, delicate. Everything should be cut with a fork. Right. And like, Una's the opposite of that. And I think it's a polarizing place for some people, because some people just really don't like that style of pizza. But I think, and I've eaten there, and I think it's, in my opinion, is a master class.
I thought it was in that delicious.
Style of pizza. Like the dough, because it's about the dough. You know what I mean? Right. And it's so flavorful. You know what I mean? For something so simple that he could build that much flavor into just a piece of pizza dough is like, and like that place is like romantic to me.
It is.
You know what I mean? Like, he's one dude, that guy Anthony, just make it. He's like, this is just the way I want to do it.
I was surprised. I thought he was doing all the stretching and then somebody next to him would do the sauce and the garnish, because you've got every ticket. Everybody has a different order. There's not a huge variety. There is a decent amount of variety, though, on there for one person to be doing it. And so I was like, oh, clearly he's going to stretch the dough and then somebody's going to come in and start dressing these pizzas. And then maybe he's going to be the one who puts them in the oven. But nope. He's stretching, he's putting the toppings and the sauce, he's putting it in and out of the oven. So I was like, okay. There's another pizza place that opened here called Pizza Studio Tamaki. It's a Japanese pizzaiolo.
I've actually been to the one in Tokyo.
Did you? Oh, they are opening one in New York. I can't wait to go.
PST Tokyo.
Okay, we got to talk offline about this.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, like we did with Beard List, let's talk about some of the trends that we see on this list of 100. And remember when we talked about Beard, one of the things that we saw there, which I'm also seeing here, is the wine focused restaurant. Borgo, Chambers, like all these places are known for their amazing wine programs. So I saw that kind of trend extended here to this list.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of that in here. And I would say the other thing we see in here, which is really interesting, because I don't think you see a lot of on this list, is like places that are like a dish or two specific.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know what I mean? Of like, oh, it's like there's an Albanian burek place on the list.
Right.
There's, the carnitas place on the list. There's a tamale place. There's dumpling place, whatever you be. But I think like that is a cool part of it, is like where it's like you can't go there and get everything, right? But like there's something here that is worth going for. Like go get that thing. And I thought like that was a really interesting, but it's a through line. You know what I mean? And I mean, I think even, Una, you could throw into that list of like, it's a pizza place, right? That where it's like, you just go for pizza. And so I think like that's really an interesting through line to this list to me as well.
That's something I actually wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
So because there's another place on here that is like a mom and pop kind of hole in the wall place that she called out for having amazing dosa. Super thin, crisp, they get folded, and then you have this massive dosa that you use to dip into different things. And then so many of the descriptions really call out one dish at these restaurants, maybe not multiple. Does one dish make something a great restaurant?
Depends how many dishes they have.
That's what I was curious about.
You know what I mean? That's the hard thing. That's why, again, this list is better if you look at it as just 100 places you should eat in New York and not the 100 best restaurants in New York. I think it serves better because when I look at this list, my number one thing is I'm like, I would love to go through it. You know what I mean? I'd love to sit with a, check box and go through and be like, I have a running list in the notes in my phone that is NYC next time. And it's just a list with bubbles next to it, and half of them are filled in and half of them aren't. Every time I eat at one, I just click the bubble being that I ate at that place. And so I look at this list kind of like that, where I'm like, I'd love to just go top to bottom and eat at every single one of these places. And I think like that's a beautiful thing of this piece, is because like for me, it's like food writing should be, the idea is to get people to restaurants, get people to experience their city in a way they're not thinking about, get people to a restaurant they've never been. Like that's good food writing to me, where it like makes you even more excited to get on the train and go to Queens. All right. So Age, you teased that a little bit earlier, but you got to give me the down low on this new podcast you got rolling out, bud.
Oh, yes, Joe, our little company is growing. We are launching our second podcast. Our next podcast is called Eating History, and this is going to be a deep dive into one food per season, probably about 8 episodes. And season 1 is about pizza. We're tracing it from its origins before it was pizza and how all these components came together, all the way through where it is currently today and where we see it going in the future.
Yeah, I mean, as chefs, we're huge history nerds. We're huge nerds. Hence, we both sit in front of a bunch of books that we fill with shelves because we love reading about food as much as we love cooking food and eating food. And so I think for us, any chance we get the opportunity to devour even more information about it in any medium is always super exciting. And talking about one of my favorite things, pizza. So that is very, very exciting.
Yeah, we talked a lot about pizza earlier, and this all kind of started because as much of a nerd as I am, I married the king of the nerds. So I'm doing the podcast with Steven, with my husband, because he was a history major in college before he went to law school. So he's all about history, research, deep diving into things. And he was already a big food lover when we met. I mean, he's from New Orleans. So we kind of combined the mutual nerdiness with our mutual love for food. Obviously, he had mad trash to talk about deep dish. I will not stand for it in this house, but he calls it a casserole.
Gotta let him know. Gotta let him know, H.
So yeah, it's really cool. So we started the podcast. It's actually going to launch on May 20th. So we've got first 2 episodes are going to drop together. And then after that, every episode is going to come out on the following Wednesday. So the day after the Chef's Cut drops.
Well, very exciting. Cannot wait to give that a listen, H.
Yes.
All right. Well, next time I'm in New York, it sounds like we got quite a bit of pizza eating to do there, buddy.
Yes, we do, for sure. We'll call it research,
Yeah, it sounds like research.
I think with pizza, we can get 6 in one day, right?
Oh, in an afternoon.
That is it for this episode of The Chef's Cut. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, especially if you're watching us on YouTube, where you can get full-length videos of every episode. And be sure to follow us on IG at The Chef's Cut Pod. For Joe Flam, I'm Adrienne Cheatham, and this has been The Chef's Cut, Life Beyond the Pass.